Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So by the title of today's video, you can tell that this is going to be my nonfiction November TBR, and this TBR/challenge was actually started by a booktuber named Olive from a book Olive, and I will leave her channel and her announcement video linked down below in my description box. But essentially this challenge is just to encourage you to read more nonfiction and to incorporate more nonfiction reads into your TBR. So I actually really love nonfictions and I love reading nonfiction, specifically memoirs, but I found throughout the past couple of months I haven't been reading as many as I would like, so I'm hoping that this challenge will get me back into the swing of things and I can incorporate these regularly in my TBR moving forward. So there are actually 4 categories within this TBR/challenge, and they are collection, industry, style, and treatment. So I actually have a book or books for each one of these categories. So first I'm going to start with collection, then I'm going to start with industry, then style, and then treatment. So please keep in mind that there are a lot of books here, so I know I'm not going to get to all of them, but this is just a pile of nonfiction reads that I'm going to choose from and that I'm going to dip and dabble into throughout the month. So yeah, like I said, the whole goal of this is just to encourage you to read at least one nonfiction read, or if you can read multiple, that's great, but if you can at least read one for this month, that's amazing. So yeah, we have quite a few books to get through, so let's get started. First category that I'm going to start with, like I mentioned, is collection, and I actually have 2 books for this category, and I'm honestly surprised because I'm not really the biggest collection/anthology type of person, but both of these books fall into that category, so I figured why not. And the first book here is Hood Feminism by Nikki Kendall, and this is just a collection of essays that talks about intersectionality and feminism and how a lot of groups sometimes are excluded from mainstream feminism, so Black women, Latinx women, Asian women, etc. And I just thought that this was going to be an interesting read. I have had this on my TBR for a long time now, and I know that this book has been out for a minute, so I'm a little late to the wave, but I am really excited to read this nonetheless. And I really want to read more feminist works, critical race theory and just gender studies and all of that type of stuff, to really educate myself on this topic and to be just more well informed, and to also be able to hold my own if I have a conversation with somebody about this particular topic. So yeah, I definitely want to learn more about feminism and intersectionality in particular, because I do think women of color unfortunately are excluded a lot of the times when it comes to conversations about mainstream feminism. So I just think that this is a great book to read to ensure that all of us can be active participants in this conversation, and to make sure that if you're an ally, making sure that you're an active ally. The next book that I have here is Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates, and I actually saw this book being brought up in one of Jordan Teresa's internet analysis videos, and I will leave the link to her video down below where she actually talks about this book a little bit more in depth. So this book is what it says in the title. This is a book about men who hate women and pretty much the rise of the movement and just kind of how all of this came to be. And so Laura Bates is actually an advocate, and she also has done a lot of research to create this book, and she's had interviews with academics and just other advocates and people that are really interested in this topic and in this phenomenon, I guess you could say. And she really sat down with these people and really tried to figure out why is there an epidemic of violence against women, and why are gender-based killings a thing, and all of that type of stuff. So I really want to be more educated on these topics and just more well informed. I do know that this is a heavy book. A lot of people who have read this book have said that it is very heavy, it is very dark, and it is very traumatic and triggering. So I definitely recommend looking up trigger warnings to all of these books, but especially this one, just because Laura Bates does a lot of research, and she actually goes really in depth about the incel movement and found a lot of gruesome and disturbing and horrifying social media posts that some of these men have posted in response to violence against women and all of that type of stuff. So like I said, definitely recommend looking up the trigger warning, but cannot wait to jump into this and really see everything that she uncovered. And hopefully this book also provides solutions and resources in terms of how we can combat this and how we can continue to educate and really lead thought-provoking discussions to get rid of this problem that is, you know, violence against women. So yeah, like I said, really excited to read this one, but I know it's going to be a heavy read. So the next category here is industry, and the way I interpreted this honestly was politics and government affairs. So I've really been interested in reading more books that are in this realm. The first book that I have here that I would like to continue is A Promised Land by Barack Obama, and this is former President Barack Obama's memoir, but more so focusing on his presidency and how he even got up to this point. So this of course documents his life growing up, as well as him going through law school, meeting Michelle of course, and then also eventually throwing his hat into the political ring where he came to be Senator of Illinois, and then of course the President of the United States for 2 terms. So I'm really excited to get more into this. I actually pre-ordered this book when it first came out just because I knew I was going to want to read it and really get his thoughts on what he was going through, you know, when he was in the White House. So I'm really interested in reading more about Operation Neptune Spear, and that is the operation where him and his cabinet / administration were tracking down Osama bin Laden, and then also just really reading his thoughts on how he felt the general public perceived him. Of course, there was a lot of controversy coming from the other side when it came to his birthright and, you know, his race and just all of that type of stuff. So I'm really excited to hear his thoughts and just hearing how he got through it and how he kind of just blocked out the noise and continued to show up to his job and do what he was supposed to do as the President of the United States for those 8 years. So I just think political memoirs and, like, you know, memoirs written by presidents are so fascinating because you really get like real firsthand account from these people and just, you know, like what they were going through and how they felt as though they were seen in the public eye. So yeah, really excited to get into this a bit further. Honestly, I'm only about 100 or 200 pages in. This book is about 700 plus pages long, so it has been taking me a minute to get through it. I've been trying to read about 1 or 2 chapters a night, and you know, that's been working out well, but honestly I did fall off a bit. But now that with this challenge, I'm happy to get back into it. I don't think I'm going to finish it before this month is over, but if I could at least try to finish it before the year is over, that would be ideal. Honestly, that would be ideal. But like I said, I'm taking this slow and steady just because it is about politics, so it is a bit more dense, but it's still interesting nonetheless. So yeah, last book that I have here is The Romanov Sisters by Helen Rappaport, and this is essentially just a book really going in depth about the Romanov sisters, specifically Anastasia and her sisters, and you know, just kind of like what they liked and what they were like, I'm assuming, growing up, and you know, how they really occupied their time in the castle or in their mansion, wherever they were at during this time. But the Disney adaptation movie of Anastasia was loosely based on Anastasia Romanov, and at that time I think she was still being called the Lost Princess just because historians could not, I think, find her or her brother's remains. I think they recently found them, I'm not 100% sure, but I know that she was called the Lost Princess at some point. But this, like I said, book pretty much just talks about the Romanov sisters in depth, and I'm assuming what they were like growing up, how they occupied their time while their parents were doing their thing, ruling, and all of that type of stuff. If you look up the Romanov family, which I highly encourage you do, so that way like you could get a little bit more insight as to what I'm referring to and what I'm talking about, there's really not that many like articles and stories really about the girls and again what they were like growing up. It's more so about either their parents' rule or how the entire family met their tragic demise towards the end of their rule. So yeah, I just thought that this would be a really interesting book to read, and like I said, I've always been interested in the Romanov family ever since I watched Anastasia, so I can't wait to read more about like all of the sisters and really like what all of their roles were and kind of how they just went about their lives day to day until, unfortunately, you know, their tragic end. Honestly, I think I'm going to listen to this book on audio just because it is a bit dense. I think it is around like 400-500 pages, and I tried to like read the first like page, and like I said, it was a bit dense, so I'm probably going to listen to this on Audible. I think Helen Rappaport actually narrates this, so we'll see how that goes, but I feel like that's how I'm going to get through most of these books. Moving on to the next category, which is style. The way that I interpreted this was fashion. I am obsessed with fashion just as much as I am with books, so I already actually have like a collection of fashion books accumulating on my other bookshelf over here, so I was able to just like pick from this pile. First book that I have here is I'll Drink to That, A Life in Style with a Twist by Betty Howbright. This book is actually about a woman named Betty Howbright, and she was a coveted personal shopper for Bergdorf Goodman, and she documents her experience being a coveted shopper for them and how she curated looks and styles for the rich and the elite, and you know, just going about like choosing fashion pieces that worked for these people. I just thought that this sounded really interesting, and honestly I got this book from Thrift Books and it had nothing but like great reviews. A lot of people actually really enjoyed it, so I'm really excited to like find out more and to see how in depth she goes, and if she actually like name drops any clients that she had in the past, and just how it is being a coveted like personal shopper, but especially for a brand such as Bergdorf Goodman. So yeah, I'm really excited to read this one. I definitely want to prioritize this because I've had this for a while on my TBR, and again, I love me a good memoir. I love a good memoir, so I just think that this is going to be great. Last category here is treatment, and the way that I interpreted this was medicine. I think a lot of people that are doing this challenge have probably interpreted it this way. So the first book that I have here is The Radium Girls by Kate Moore, and this is essentially like a true story that pretty much talks about the women that were in direct contact with radium during World War I. So of course, as you all probably know, when World War I and World War II were happening, a lot of the men had to get drafted and go into the war and fight in the war, while the women stayed behind and had to actually go to work and make sure that the country and the economy was still staying afloat. And many of them had to come in contact with radium, and at the time no one really knew that radium was very deadly and lethal as we know it is today. And so a lot of these women had it in their hair, they had it on their skin, some of them were even ingesting it or at least like licking it in order to, I think, seal something in some of these factories. So a lot of these women were coming into contact with this, and like I said, they didn't know it was deadly at the time, but they were known as the Radium Girls, and they really took pride in their jobs at the time. A lot of people would call them that because of them actually glowing from the radium. So since they had it in their hair, they had it on their skin, they were like shining, like actually shining. And as time went on, of course, a lot of these women started to face severe health ailments, and a lot of them actually got cancer and just a lot of debilitating diseases that really affected their quality of life. Some of these women have even become paralyzed, could not even speak, just because of how much they were in contact with this radium. Of course, it depended on how much you were in contact with, but the more you were in contact with it, the more severe your health ailments would be. And unfortunately, some of these women, of course, just simply passed away, and the government eventually did find out that this was like a deadly thing to come into contact with, but they weren't transparent about it. So a lot of these women that were still alive and still fighting these health issues decided to, you know, go to court and really try to like sue their employers and really like get justice for themselves and the women that passed away due to the exposure to radium. So yeah, I just thought that this sounded really interesting. Kate Moore, I heard, did a lot of research into this and really just like compiled a lot of stories from real life women that went through this experience, and I just know that this is probably going to be a heartbreaking read because I remember learning about this in our history classes and just seeing pictures of some of these women towards the end of their lives, and it was just so heartbreaking to see that they went through this and their employers didn't care and the government didn't care because they were women, and because it was just kind of like, well, sorry, we didn't know. But it's like, you knew after the fact and you still didn't say anything. So yeah, I know that this is going to be a heavy read similar to all of the other books that I have here, but still excited to read it. So the last book that I have here for treatment is Brain on Fire, My Month in Madness by Susanna C. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I tried to look up the pronunciation and I got two different ones, so I'm just going to say Susanna C. But this is a memoir, and Susanna pretty much just talks about her time in a mental institution and kind of what she was going through. So it says right here that she woke up alone in a hospital room, strapped to her bed, unable to move or speak, and she had no memory of how she got in there. But days earlier, she was at the beginning of her very first serious relationship, and she had a promising career at a major New York newspaper. But then she was labeled as violent, psychotic, and a flight risk. What happened? So yeah, this pretty much just talks about her time in the mental institution and how she overcame her struggles. And this has actually became, I think, like a movie adaptation starring Chloe Grace Moretz, which I didn't know about. So yeah, I cannot wait to read this one, and I'm definitely going to watch the movie after I read this, but I just know that this is going to probably be such an eye-opening, all of these books are, but I know that this one in particular is going to be an eye-opening read just because this is a first-hand account of someone going through, you know, mental health issues, and really documenting like what they were feeling and how they were feeling and what they were going through. So yeah, this won like a lot of awards. It's been like critically acclaimed, so I know that this is going to be a great read. All right, and then I have two honorable mentions that I wanted to include here that don't really fall, I feel like, into a category. So the first one that I have here is The Meaning of Mariah Carey. So this is a memoir written by Mariah Carey, and this pretty much just talks about, I'm assuming, her childhood growing up and how she got into the entertainment industry, and then of course her professional and personal tumultuous relationship with Tony Mottola, her former husband, but also her former manager at the time. So I have been a fan of Mariah Carey for a long time now. I'm actually just starting to really get into her discography, like starting from her self-titled album all the way up until her most recent album, and really like trying to pick and choose which are my favorite songs from the albums. And I have just, like I said, always respected her. She is a lyrical genius. She is just such an amazing entertainer and singer, and you know, her voice is just chef's kiss. So I knew when I found out that she was coming out with a memoir, I knew I had to pick it up because I really want to like hear her story and her like narrative and what she was going through during that time with Tony Mottola in particular, just because there was a lot of really messed up things that happened to Mariah during that time in her life. And I just can't wait to also get to the chapter where she talks about her album, The Emancipation of Mimi. Talk about a comeback, talk about a phenomenal comeback. Like, people really counted her out and she proved everybody wrong, as she always does. So I cannot wait to read this one, and I think this is going to actually be my first like nonfiction November read, just because I found this out recently that she came out with a memoir, so I have to read it right away. Last book that I will throw in as an honorable mention is A Stolen Life by J.C. Lee Dugard. So this is a memoir by J.C. Lee Dugard, and for those of you who do not know, J.C. was a child back in the 90s, and she was kidnapped from her hometown, and she was actually held in captivity for 18 years. So she lost years with her family and friends, and this is pretty much just her taking back the narrative and controlling it, similar to Mariah's memoir, and really just talking about her time, I'm assuming, in captivity, but also how she is moving forward today as an adult and as a grown woman, and pretty much just probably talking about how she has, again, overcome that type of stuff. So yeah, I'm really interested in reading this one. I actually also have Elizabeth Smart's memoir, and I haven't read that one yet, but I definitely plan on reading that soon. But I have done a lot of my own research on both Elizabeth Smart and J.C. Lee Dugard's survival stories, and it's just so heartbreaking, so heartbreaking that they both went through, you know, similar experiences. It's just also really heartbreaking that JC lost 18 years, you know, of her life in captivity. It's just really a shame, but it's still an important story that needs to be heard and needs to be read. And I feel like these type of memoirs, you know, can help any of us, whether you're into true crime or not. I feel like it can help any of us in terms of just staying vigilant and just staying, you know, alert and aware, and making sure that we can keep not only ourselves safe, but others that are around us safe as well. All right, y'all, so those are all of the books that I'm hoping to get to in the month of November. I know I won't get to all of them, but at least picking from this pile when I do decide to pick up a nonfiction read. Like I said, The Meaning of Mariah Carey will be the first book that I read, but after that, I'm definitely just going to go with whatever I feel I'm in the mood for and report back when I do my November wrap up. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you guys are going to participate in Nonfiction November. Like I said, I will leave Olive's channel and announcement video link down below so that way you can check it out for yourself. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one.